All right, let's get into the Packers a little bit here. So we had the reaction following their 22-10 loss to the Eagles. Of course, I still think that game from the very, very first play got off to the worst start possible with the fumble. The Packers were kind of hosed on that call by the refs. Who knows where the game goes if that doesn't happen. I was upset watching that. Partially, I do not like the Eagles as well as the Packers, but we're going to take a look here. This was a disappointing year for the Packers. A couple fans have called it a failure. I wasn't willing to go that far. I don't think you were either, but certainly disappointing given the expectations that Green Bay had. Let's take a quick look.
You've been watching Andy Herman?
Me?
That was exactly what he said. He said it's not a failure, but it was a disappointment.
Well, maybe Andy was watching us. I said that like 10 minutes after the game ended. So maybe Andy was watching the Paul Farrington show. I did not see Herman's reaction yet. That's funny. But great minds think alike. So the needs for this team, Ziggy. Let's each give one big need, okay? Coming into next season. This is a Packers team that I think everyone still believes in, and you just said it in the last segment. This is still a team that can go on a Super Bowl run next year. I'd be shocked if they weren't one of the top 10 favorites on the odds. They probably, those odds I'm sure are out already. But Green Bay is still one of the big contenders. They just need to get back to that winning football they were playing at the end of last season so consistently. It was too jittered this year. There wasn't enough consistently good play for this to be a Super Bowl team, and they came into the season the postseason on a 2-game losing streak. Different feeling from last year when they were red hot, winning 6 out of the final 8. So, Ziggy, what do you think is the biggest need for the Green Bay Packers heading into 2025?
The Packers this year were a team that went as far as their defense, and the defense was often good, but it wasn't quite good enough. And I think the thing that's holding this Packers team back from being having a truly championship level defense, there's really only one position. The defensive line played well enough. The linebackers, Edgerrin Cooper looks like he is going to be a star.
Yeah,
the safeties are probably the best in the entire league. The big problem for this team on defense is at cornerback. Now, if you live in like magical Christmas land and everybody could be healthy all the time, maybe the cornerbacks would be good enough. But it's January. It's the middle of January. As the Packers saw in Philadelphia, Christmas time is over. And Jaire Alexander has played 34 games in the past 4 seasons. You've got Corey Ballantyne, Eric Stokes, Robert Rochelle heading out of the building. Now, I'm not saying all those guys were elite, but that just furthers the need for this. The Packers need cornerbacks. It's not just depth. They need reliable starters, guys that aren't going to get hurt, guys that can play just about every game for them. And the Packers,
that feels like a
it's
shot.
not clear they have a single one of those guys. Maybe they have one, right? Carrington Valentine had looked pretty good at different points in the season, but the Packers on defense are in desperate need of cornerbacks. And it doesn't matter if you can get pass rush going. It doesn't matter if you've got the best run defense in the NFL. If your cornerbacks are getting beat on almost every play, you can't keep up with the Lions. You can't keep up with the Vikings. You can't keep up with the Eagles.
The pulse that I'm getting from Packers Nation right now is that they're kind of done with Jaire. The dude just hasn't played football in a long time. When's the last time he was healthy for a full season? What was the stat you had, Ziggy? He's missed how many games? Or
he's played 34 games in the past 4 seasons. In the past 4 seasons, he's played more than 7 games once.
Yeah, and look, for as good as he is when he plays, you got to be on the field. Availability is the best ability. And without him, you're trying out Eric Stokes, who I think he was out, right, for the last game. They just didn't play him against the Bears.
Yeah, and he's another guy who's had a career ravaged by injuries.
Yes, ravaged by injuries. There's a bunch of guys who are walking out the door, like you said. Look at what they did with the safety room, right? Last season, or 2 seasons ago, the Packers safety room needed to be blown up, and it was. Now you're at the spot where you have Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, like you said, possibly the best tandem in the league. Javon Bullard being a backup there is awesome. Like, they revamped it completely, and now they have one of the best rooms. They kind of need to do that with the cornerback room. And it's much easier said than done, right? Here we are as Vikings fans. We've been drafting first-round cornerbacks for a decade, and we haven't found real stability at that position. Cornerback is hard to find. It's hard to really lock in to a stud. That's why it's tough to move on. If you want to move on from Jaire Alexander, go for it. But you know what? When you're getting scorched by Jared Goff in week 6 next season, you're going to be looking around at Jaire somewhere else if he's playing. This is the thing. If he's playing and saying, wow, I wish we had that guy back on our roster.
I think I've seen some Packers fans comparing the Jaire situation to David Bakhtiari. And I will say, I think this is a totally different situation. Bakhtiari was a weird case where a single injury cost him 3 seasons, just about. He played, 12 games across his last 3 seasons, 13 games, something like that. Jaire has gotten unfortunate, right? He had that shoulder injury, he had the knee injury this year. The medical staff, it seems, rushed him back, and he re-injured it. There's a disaster all around. The defense plays a lot better with Jaire on the field. I know some Packers fans have forgotten this, and I can understand why, given how little he's played, but there's a reason this guy got a top 5 cornerback contract in the NFL. My prediction is they're going to do with him what they did with Preston Smith, where they say, look, we'll have you back, but we're going to pay you a little bit less. We're going to give you some incentives so that if you're healthy and if you're playing, you'll make about as much as you would have. And then we can renegotiate after this year. I don't know if Jaire will be amenable to that, if he'd rather get cut and go somewhere else. I don't think getting rid of him is the solution. But even if you have Jaire Alexander for 17 games and he plays first team all-pro level like he can, he alone is not enough to fix this room.
No, but you know what? That's a pretty damn good start, right? If you're Jaire Alexander, without him, this cornerback room,
and here's the thing. Without him, it can't be great next year. You can't get 3 great corners in an offseason.
Yes.
You can't even really get 3 good corners. The only path to them having a great cornerback room next season is hoping Jaire gets healthy and adding 1 great player around him. And that's much more feasible.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. So you're going to need to go about that route. And there's some additions that need to be added to the rest of this Packer defense. I think they're on the right track. Jeff Hafley came in, and everyone would agree that was an upgrade as to what they had last season. So you go ahead, get a few more pieces. Edrin Cooper's emergence, as you said, was huge. On the D-line, Lucas Van Ness didn't turn into what a lot of people were expecting this year. Rashawn Gary doesn't always play up to the level of the contract he was awarded. So you still need a couple more. You want the animals. You want someone to come in and just be a freak like Edrin Cooper was to end the season. And if you get one more of those guys, I think this Packer defense is trending in the right direction. They just need to fill a few holes here or there. I'm going to take things over to the offensive side of the ball. And it's kind of obvious where we're going. But the receiving room, obviously it's talented. Obviously they have 4 guys that they trust a lot in Dontavian Wicks, Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson. But again, injuries are kind of like, for Christian Watson especially, injuries, huge concern. Romeo Doubs missed time this year. I think Jayden Reed is the best of the group, but there's no alpha receiver. And this is what we talked about in the reaction show against the Eagles. At times when you're watching the Packers, you just want a little more from the receivers, especially when you have situations like this season where the 4 of them were rarely on the field together. You want that guy who can take over a game. Look at the impact that and this is unfair to say Justin Jefferson because he's amazing. He's the best in the league. But you see the impact that Justin Jefferson can have for guys like Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, TJ Hawkinson. If you just have an elite alpha number 1, which LaFleur said he wanted to vomit hearing it this offseason. People are asking who the one is. He's like, I'm tired of hearing this. When you have that guy, it opens everything else up. Like, let's pretend they go and get Tee Higgins. That's a name that's been mentioned a lot. You have to pay more attention to Tee Higgins. Opens things up for Josh Jacobs. That gives more time for Jordan Love to throw the football. It opens things up for Jayden Reed. I think they're missing that one dude to take attention away from these other playmakers from catapulting into that offensive sphere that we expected them to get into this year. So that's got to be a position that they look at. And I think Tee Higgins is a name. I also think Davante Adams is a name for someone they might go after. He was on Kay Adams' show. I don't know if you saw this, Ziggy. He said they asked him what the Packers need. He said the Packers obviously depends on the health of the team. It's looking right now like they might need some receiver help in one way or another. Maybe a veteran or something. We'll see. So maybe
I think he's talking about Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill. I think any Packer fan would take Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, the thing is the Packers were going into this season, I think, hoping that one of their 4 receivers would have a breakout season. And I think maybe the least likely outcome happened. All of them were okay. None of them really sucked. None of them broke out. But the injuries were disastrous. Romeo Doubs now has a concussion history. It's been there. It's caused a lot of problems. Christian Watson, tearing your ACL in week 18, he won't be back to start the season, I don't think. There's a chance he misses a substantial part of next year. So even if they can't even bring back the same room they had this year. You're absolutely right that they need upgrades. They need it now. I don't think they have time to draft a guy, see and hope that he hits. You can there's always going to be a couple rookie receivers that have incredible seasons, but usually they were drafted just behind guys who were total busts. You never know which end of that you're going to end up on. So I think if you're the Packers, free agency and trades are probably the place to go. We saw the Eagles doing this with A.J. Brown. When there's an opportunity, now they can't get a guy quite like that, I don't think. I don't think there'll be someone as young, as exciting. But we saw when A.J. Brown was traded to the Eagles, the offense immediately exploded.
Yep.
If you can get those top guys in, they not only do they make the other wide receivers look well, but more importantly, I think for the Packers, they make the quarterback look great too. The quarterback gets easier throws. He gets a guy he can rely on. He gets a safety blanket. He gets a deep threat all in one. Like there's lots of guys around the league that can do that. The Packers should be considering. Jordan Love is not at the level, and there's very, very few quarterbacks that can do this. They can level up mediocre wide receivers, journeymen, and make a great offense out of it. Patrick Mahomes can do it. Josh Allen can do it. Lamar Jackson can ignore it because he can run. That's basically it for guys who have in the NFL that have shown that they can do that. There's no shame in Jordan Love that he's not there. But we have seen time and time again, adding that wide receiver one can unlock something. It happened to Joe Burrow. It happened to Jalen Hurts. It's happened around the league.
Happened to Tua with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, even though the Dolphins haven't won anything, their offense got so much better. The defense started holding them back. Getting that wide receiver one can transform a young quarterback's career, and failing to get it can ruin it.
And you look at the teams too who are in the playoffs right now, right? You have the big three with Lamar, Mahomes, and Josh Allen. They're the kind of guys that can sort of exist without a wide receiver one because they're just that good. I don't think any Packer
Josh Allen needed Stephon Diggs to kickstart his run.
No, to kickstart it 100%. But like right now they're self-sustaining. They're just machines, those guys. You look, and I don't think any Packer fan would argue Jordan Love is on that level, at least right now. And then the other teams that are making the playoffs, right? You got the Vikings with Jefferson. You got the Rams with Puka and Cooper Kupp. Baker and Mike Evans, who's, I think, better than all the Packer receivers. Like, you could go up and down the board here. The Commanders had Terry McLaurin. Like, the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Go through all the playoff teams, right? Nico Collins, one of the best receivers in the league for Houston. All these teams that got in, really outside of the Packers, maybe the Steelers, depends what you think of George Pickens, had either an elite receiver or one of the three best quarterbacks in football. The Packers were the only team really that did not have that. And
if you look at like the Chargers and the Steelers and the Packers, they had horrible games.
Yeah, exactly.
The Broncos, horrible game.
Exactly. Those teams that got in, horrible games without having that stud receiver there. They're all out. They're all out and played terrible football. So you sort of need that. And I think the Packers sit at the top of that group. If you were to say the Chargers, the Steelers, the Broncos, and Green Bay, most people would be most bullish on the Packers. It's not a bad spot to be in where Green Bay is. It's just if you could get that guy, you could go to the next level. And I wonder what Davante Adams could look like if there's a little bit more gas in the tank. But Tee Higgins is probably the guy that everyone's going to look at this year. And you mentioned it with I think A.J. Brown to Philly's the best example here, or that's probably the best one. What those guys can do. I think of Alshon Jeffrey going to Philly in 2017. One of my lesser known takes is that Alshon Jeffrey picking the Philadelphia Eagles over the Vikings in 2017, that offseason, I think that actually may have decided the Super Bowl. As crazy as that sounds, because those were the two teams who were playing at the end of the year. Jeffrey kicked our ass, was great the playoff run. He was awesome that year, and we just didn't have enough weapons at the end there against Philly. I mean, there's so many reasons that game fell apart, but receiver and cornerback would be the two biggest needs. And if Green Bay's able to address it, there's no reason that this team won't be back. People will say we're pandering by saying this, but come on, like you look at what's going on here. It's an 11-6 team. They're not that far off. Just get the right pieces in place and look out. Well, we should have a fun NFC North next year.